And I would also say for the parents, like give yourself grace as well. That like you're not, say there's three kids in the family and you have three separate conversations or something. You might not get every single one of them perfectly right, and you might, say something that you're like, "Ah, that wasn't exactly how I wanted to phrase that," or "Oh, I think I upset them even more." That it's okay. Like you will get through it, through that conversation, and I don't want people to hold themselves to like a standard that the parent child conversation is going to be this like perfectly therapeutic, wonderfully clinical conversation. It's not, as long as there's love.
I am so honored to be joined by Drew Horn today, mental health therapist, as we do a deep dive into all that we need to wrap our arms around with for our children, whether it's a child that might be walking through a challenging time or diagnosis, or maybe the siblings, the relationship, the family bond, the unit, our role as parents and caregivers. We touch on everything, and he is such an incredible source of information and ideas, and really gives me at least some of those light bulb moments. And I certainly hope you are able to draw the same. I am so grateful and honored to have Drew joining us today.
I I feel like I always start by telling people I'm like a born and raised Hoosier. I've been in Indiana forever. I'm from a small town, Richmond, Indiana, on the border of Ohio and Indiana. Um, I really, really love my family. That is a huge part of It's the biggest part of my life. Really close with my mom, and then I'm really close with my older sister. And my older sister has a son, and I'm really, really, really close with my nephew, who will be turning 6 here in just a few weeks. Um, so yeah, I would say like my family is a huge part of my life, and kind of shapes a lot of what I do. Um, uh, Professionally, I am a mental health therapist, and I primarily work with kids. Actually, I exclusively work with kids right now, kids only. And um, yeah, other than that, I don't know. I'm very busy. It seems like I love. I have a lot of really close friends. I love going on hikes with them. I love watching movies with them. I love the Monon Trail in Indianapolis. It's one of my favorite spots. It's a very peaceful spot for me. Uh,
Yes.
so yeah, those are a little bit about me.
Thank you. That gives a beautiful glimpse of what we're going to dive into today. Tell me, out of all of the paths that you could have taken, you landed in the mental health world, which is clearly a huge, huge need for us and presence. But let me ask you, what keeps you showing up for these kids and
Mhm.
for the work that you are called to do?
Yeah, I think it's that children are so resilient,
Mm,
and I think I'm always amazed at how, children will have gone through major crises or traumas or really heavy life experiences that even as adults we couldn't imagine or fathom going through. And I will meet with kids that have gone through these experiences, and they just want to play. Like they're full of life, they're full of joy. They just want to go be creative and play and make believe and pretend and do full narratives around good guys and bad guys and superheroes and
mm,
all the wonderful things that like we know children love. I love that children can just go right back to
right.
that place of childhood joy and childhood fun. For me, it really like inspires me whenever I'm meeting with someone who has gone through something really challenging and they're still full of that joy and that life. I'm just like, we should all be like him. We should all be like her. Like. And so I think it's very inspiring when I work with them. I want to be more like that. I want to be more resilient.
Right. How do you think, because the resilience of children is amazing. I have personally witnessed it, and you're familiar with our story.
Yeah.
Uh, what do you pull from these kids? I mean, you watch them walking through these pretty challenging and times that are literally shaping their life.
Mhm.
As adults, what can we learn from that?
Yeah, I would say that things I've noticed or things I've pulled from is that the kids are always listening. They're always kind of picking up on things,
Mm,
and so I think, um, you know, I think a lot of folks sometimes choose or um, sometimes adults will think we have to kind of lie to the kids about whatever's going on, or we have to hide this thing that's happening in our family from the kids. And either way, and I think there's definitely levels to disclosure on details of
sure.
certain family experiences and crises. Absolutely, for everything needs to be age appropriate, but kids pick up on the feelings, and so I think I always tell people to disclose how you're feeling. It doesn't have to be everything, but um, something that I pull out from kids is that they're aware of the adult's emotions.
Mm,
You know, I've had kids tell me before, like, "Mommy's really stressed right now."
mm,
And I'll go, "Do you know why?" And they're like, "I don't know. They were on a call with grandma, but I don't know." You
mm,
know, they pull out the
right,
emotions of what's happening, and I think a lot of times kids maybe understand, you know, once disclosure happens and details are shared, maybe some kids will understand what's going on. A lot of kids won't. You know, they won't fully understand, but I think kids will feel uh, really, really included and like a part of everything if the emotion is disclosed. Of like, I'm feeling really sad today.
right.
Um, yeah, I feel like that's something I always notice is kids always have their radars on. They're always, even when they're in the other room playing, they're listening.
Right. That leads into a question that I know a lot of parents and a lot of caregivers wonder is, how do we best have those conversations with kids and understanding different ages and different stages? Eh,
Yeah.
I think we grapple as parents, right? Because we want to protect, and sometimes we might
Mm,
go a little extreme on one way or the other. But, what would be that best advice you could give a parent sitting here
sure.
with you that maybe has just received a pretty disheartening diagnosis or path that they have to walk with their children?
Yeah. I I think my first thought is that you know, whatever that new path is going to be, you know, whether it's a family crisis or a diagnosis or you know, family challenge in some way. I think that the reality, and this is maybe a little tough, is that that experience will likely be traumatic for everybody in the family.
Mm,
You know, even if it primarily is circling around one individual of the family that's maybe going through the primary crisis, that everyone's going to feel that trauma, and so I would approach it in that way that there's it needs to be a delicate conversation for sure. I have sometimes heard from some folks that like, oh well, the older kids we can just tell them in the car on the way there and that they'll be fine. I think that kind of giving that space for all of the family members, all of the children, if there's multiple children in the family, to have their own individual time with that maybe
mm,
the parent and that child, and that they disclose that one on one
mm,
because they might have questions that they don't want to ask in front of other people. They might have questions that maybe you as the parent didn't think, oh, I didn't think at 12 years old you'd be asking that question, but I guess I can share that a little bit. You know, they might surprise you with what they're curious about. And I would really tailor that conversation to that age.
mm,
Um, and I would let them know that like it's okay to be afraid. It's okay to be scared right now, and it's okay to be overwhelmed, and that you're there to support them as well. That um, maybe some of the focus might shift, or it might seem like it's shifting, but that you're still there for that child throughout this whole process. And really, really reeling in that it's something that they're all going to go through together,
mm,
kind of as a team, as a family. I just, I never, whenever I work with families where maybe one child is going through the crisis, um, I always just kind of worry about the other kids too.
mm.
I just don't want them to be, um, you know, overlooked, accidentally, of course, but overlooked.
Right. Well, and I know often we would describe this as one child is diagnosed, let's say, for example, one child is diagnosed, but it becomes an entire family affair.
Yeah,
And especially if you have multiple children or children of many different ages, because they're all receiving things different and understanding things differently. And, how can you best take what's happening with one child, yet it's multiplied however many children you have, and then being
yeah,
able to give that appropriate attention. And, I always say as parents, we do the best that we can, but then when you're loaded down with stress and uncertainty and lack of control, it gets hard to keep that balance
yeah.
other than just really being aware and maybe having those open conversations, especially if your children are a
Right.
little older, that we're doing this together.
Yeah, and I would also say for the parents, like give yourself grace as well. That like you're not, say there's three kids in the family and you have three separate conversations or something. You might not get every single one of them perfectly right, and you might, say something that you're like, oh, that wasn't exactly how I wanted to phrase that, or oh, I think I upset them even more. That it's okay. Like you will get through it, through that conversation, and I don't want people to hold themselves to like a standard that the parent child conversation is going to be this like perfectly therapeutic, wonderfully clinical conversation. It's not, as long as there's love.
Well, and obviously you have a special connection with one of my kiddos, and
Yeah,
I always tell all of my kids, we do the best that we can do
right.
with what we have and what we know. And I don't know, I think as a mom, our mess ups and our stumbles and our fumbles also show that we're human, and
Yeah,
and shows our children and those around us as well that yeah, sometimes we mess up,
yeah,
and that's
totally normal.
all a part of life. And okay,
Yeah,
how can we learn from that?
right.
And learn and come back and do different or do better next time.
Yeah.
So more than anything, I feel like, you know, a a strong message would be just to see our other children along with
Hmm.
the one who might be facing some challenges.
Yeah, absolutely, and to really be there for them as well,
Right.
even in little ways. Yeah.
What would you, or how could you guide a parent to perhaps if there were some struggles? Are there signs that would say, keep your eyes open for this, or things of
Sure.
that nature?
I think anytime children are like isolating themselves,
Mm,
it's like if they're just going to their room, they're not really wanting to come down for dinner, or they're not wanting to, um, say you guys are doing something as a family, they don't want to go. Anytime there's kind of a physical isolation, or even even if they're present and they're just not talking, kind
mm,
of like an emotional isolation. I think about that a lot in like car rides. That like often there will be kind of one child that's just not even engaging and like doesn't really want to even kind of be a part of things. To me, that tells me that the child is feeling maybe disconnected in some way from the family. It could be their own, like they're feeling overwhelmed or stressed and they're pushing away. That could be, they're intentionally or unintentionally kind of doing that, or it could feel like, it could potentially be that they're not feeling supported, or they're not feeling heard or seen, and so they just need a little tug of inclusion in some way. They need that to kind of feel that the dynamics and the family roles are still there, that they're still a part of the family,
right,
even if they're not the one that is currently requiring a majority of the time or attention to.
right. So there are different things that we can look for as parents that might
Yeah,
that might raise a flag, and again maybe be able to wrap our arms around something a little sooner than
yeah, absolutely,
otherwise.
absolutely.
Are there certain steps you would encourage parents to take depending on the age or the circumstances, or maybe even seeking support if it is a situation where a parent and child are facing a medical complexity that they could even bring to that doctor for for continued guidance and support.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, yeah, if it gets to a point where the child is so isolated that they are not spending any time with their friends, they're not asking to go to their friends' houses anymore, and they're not um, wanting to kind of engage socially or with either like their peers or with their family, and they're not wanting to attend any family events, I would definitely start to kind of worry a little bit about, and it could be a variety of different diagnoses, potential like mental health diagnoses, um, even kind of like a temporary one. Could be a bout of like a depression or something like that, or it could be like a long term grief about the situation that is going on, or even kind of like a shock of what's going on.
Right.
Um, but I would definitely say um, engaging them. Maybe first try with some recommendations of like um, before going to maybe a provider, recommending more of like a, hey, let's do that thing that we used to do with your friends. Let's go to the park and play soccer, or let's go to, like, kind of you suggesting as a parent, kind of reigniting some of those passions that maybe they
Right.
had previously, to try to kind of engage them. And after many attempts of that, if they're still just like, no, I'm disengaging, I'm disconnecting, then I think and over maybe like a period of time, I'd say a month or two, I would definitely recommend maybe seeking out some mental health therapy.
Right.
Um, and you can pitch it to them that, hey, I think we're going to do this as a family.
Mm.
I would love for you and I to go together, or to make it a little less scary, um, and kind of explore through that. Depending on the child's age, there's so many different types of therapy. But if they're like under 10, I would definitely look for a play therapist. I think that the children that I work with, who we primarily do that, they love it, and usually they're a little skeptical when they first come in.
Sure.
They don't really, not really sure yet, but they love it once they engage in it. So, and it really does seem to impact them. So, and then 10 and older, and that's a rough number. That's not exactly a concrete thing, but 10 and older, I would maybe look for like a CBT, a cognitive behavior therapy, which is like the
Right.
pretty standard talk therapy.
Well, and more than anything, what I hope people who are listening to this can draw upon is that there is help and there is support,
Oh yeah,
and and there's often a whole lot coming at families at once, and so to just have, that, find that calm in your heart, that just one step at a time, and being aware of of what's happening, not just
yeah,
with one child but really the entire family, but that there is support out there that can be found.
yeah. Oh yes, and there, if I know you probably have listeners all over, but if anyone's in Indiana, there are so many,
Good.
so many children therapists in Indiana. There's a large community, um, and so yeah, it would be hard not to find one. So
Okay, thank you for that. What are practical tools you had mentioned previously,
yeah,
but let's say, that a family's in the thick of it right now,
yeah,
and well in the weeds of what's
yeah,
happening. What are additional practical tools that you could recommend just for anybody that's listening, whether they're facing a medical complexity or not? You had mentioned a lot of play with the younger children. Are there
yeah,
are there other suggestions you can give to parents who might
sure.
be walking through with kids of all ages and all different developmental stages? Where would be a solid place to start?
Yeah, I think that kind of at home, um, and I say all of this with the knowledge that the parent themselves is probably very exhausted and probably very emotionally drained, and so I never want to provide some like homework or some extra labor for the parent, because it's like, who knows how many hours of sleep they've been getting this week?
Right.
You never know. Have they eaten today? I don't know. Their kids probably have, but have they? Um, but I would say the kind of the easiest things is to do something intentional at home,
Mm.
doing something like a movie night where the kid picks the movie, and having that. If the family has any type of like visual schedule anywhere, like a calendar on the wall or anything like that, putting, you know on the little day that it's, Drew's night, Drew's movie night,
Right.
and making it special. I think that
Mhm.
an underutilized tool I often this sounds so silly are stickers and like glitter pens and just really jazzing it up, like really making it
Right.
uh, special, so that the child can see that
Yes.
it helps them reinforce then later. Maybe the parent post that somewhere. Maybe if it's just on a piece of paper on the fridge that says Tuesday night is Drew's movie night. We're all watching whatever movie. Having that somewhere visual,
Mm.
um, the parent will put that up, and then maybe the parent has to go do things for the next 4 or 5 hours that they can't be there. The child can then that reinforces the child. Like that child can go back to the fridge. Oh yeah, it's Tuesday night. Tuesday night. What am I going to pick? What am I going to pick? It's such a positive reinforcement when they see like a visual cue of something coming up, and it gives them something to think about. So I would encourage parents to think about: is there anything that you can plan, in the near future? Maybe a movie night, maybe a family soccer in the backyard, or a Lego building competition, or we're all gonna go get these cookies on this day, and that's where it's a family outing, family field trip, something that children can look forward to. That doesn't have to cost a bunch of money. It doesn't have to
Right.
be expensive or elaborate. It doesn't need to require the parent to do a lot of labor or time or planning, but something that the children can look forward to, and you really kind of hype it up,
Right.
and that will kind of help the child in a way be a little distracted from maybe the greater crisis of the moment. But
I love
um,
that. Well, and
yeah,
what I've heard you express through this is just for a child to be seen, whether that's
yeah,
the child or the sibling or, and again, I don't know. Personally, I think a lot of the things we address and talk about here at Rooted Within are ideal for whether you're in the thick of it or not, to be honest,
sure,
as a parent,
sure,
and as a family. And that is just slowing down and
yeah,
giving yourself that permission to pause and
right,
seeing your kids and allowing them to feel seen
sure,
is, sometimes some of the best medicine.
yeah.
And let's be real, even as adults, we love sticker charts, right?
Me too. Absolutely, absolutely.
I laugh because that was always our inspiration at a gym that I used to attend was a
Uh-huh.
30-day sticker chart. And man, people showed up when we got our stickers. So
Oh
too
yes.
old for stickers.
I have booklets and booklets of
Isn't
stickers.
that great? Yes. Yes. Never undermine the power of a sticker.
Yes,
But
absolutely.
also, this brings something to mind, which I literally had not thought about for decades. But Luke, one of my kiddos of 5, recently, I've recently moved, and we've been going through a lot of stuff and packing and unpacking, and something reminded him of a memory that we used to do when all the kids were younger, and we called
Mhm.
it sleep wherever you want night. And I would let my 5 kids literally choose any place in the house where they could roll out their sleeping bags, make their fort. And
Oh,
I had
wow.
forgotten all about that, but it was a big deal in our family.
Oh yeah.
Everybody was included and, involved, and they would pick the most unique, random, obscure down hallways and, not your typical throw a blanket on the family room floor. It was
Right.
a deal. And it just brought such warmth because what he didn't mention was it was when we were in the thick of some pretty heavy times.
Sure.
Yet that wasn't what came to mind. What came to mind was the creepy cuckoo clock that would go off in the
Mhm.
middle of the night,
Right.
or the fact that they were all together doing something that was out of the ordinary for our
Sure.
family. And we did. We called it Sleep Wherever You Want Night. It didn't cost us a dime.
Yeah.
But here, decades later, it's what he was reflecting back on when, in fact,
Mhm.
we had a whole lot bigger problems at the time, but that's not what he remembered.
Is
And it,
that so? Yeah. Love
yeah.
that.
So again, I think as parents, and caregivers to just recognize it doesn't have to be something that has a big price tag. Uh,
No. And that's so powerful because with with the story you shared, Luke is remembering that fun, that joy, that family love, that family bonding, and I've said this to families before too. Do a little family silly, like do something,
Right.
and that's a perfect. I'm gonna have to recommend that to folks. That's a perfect example of like it shakes up the routine just enough that it feels so fun, and
Yes.
it's so silly that and that I love that story because he remembers that I mean, I'm sure he has the memories of the scary parts too, but like that moment really stands out, and that's it's perfect. It's a
Yes.
perfect memory. Yeah.
Well, I was happy he brought it to my attention because, to be honest, I had literally forgotten all about it because I also was a mom that was buried. But
Yeah.
finding those things, and that would be a question I'd have for you. You obviously have walked through a lot of families,
Sure.
and have been doing this for a long time. What what gives you hope with
Mhm.
what see for these families and for these kids and for what they're going through? What is
Yeah.
that one thing that, just keeps
Sure.
showing up as hope for you?
I would say there are two things. I think about it from the parent side and the child side. I think from the parent side, something that gives me a lot of hope is how parents are just trying so hard to get it right. They're really striving to um, you know ask questions, learn more. Am I doing this right? And it's the way that they're never going to get every moment perfect, but the drive and the motivation, that is what's right. Like
Mm,
the drive to say I really want to try to meet all my kids needs, even when our needs right now are through the roof and we're just completely overwhelmed. And I think that parents who have that drive to, I'm really going to keep trying to get it right for all the kids, and really strive to wake up every day and learn and ask questions. When I'm in a therapy session with families and the parents are asking me, how do I do this, or what should I do for this, it's
right.
always a green flag for me that they're
Mm,
really trying to learn and they're trying to meet their kids needs. They're aware that maybe they don't always get it right and they're wanting to learn, and that is what's most valuable, is that that curiosity, that
sure.
wanting more knowledge, wanting more skills. That's what gives me a lot of hope for parents. And then for kids, I would say just, I mean, I kind of already talked about it, but just the absolute joy and fun that they have. I I often think about, this is kind of a strange thought, but like when kids are at places where they're not really designed for kids, I think about like big gatherings, like a wedding, or even like funerals, or adult parties, or any type of event where you're like, kids aren't really designed to be here, but kids are probably here, and you see the kids running through the crowd.
Right.
That is like a through line. That's a hope through line for me. I'm just like, kids are always going to be kids no matter where they are. I've been in hospital waiting rooms where kids are playing. It's like there could be really heavy things going on, and the kids are still kids.
Yeah.
And so that gives me a lot of hope, and it really does inspire me. I'm like,
Mm,
I got to be more like that. Like,
right.
I gotta enjoy life more, and I can absorb what's happening around me, and I can absorb the heavy and absorb the stress, but that I still want to have that like childhood joy and that like kind of zest for life. So
Those are such beautiful words because we so often lose that joy as
yeah,
we grow up.
yeah,
And I think, think of when we were young, what were we doing? We were outside running around, we were getting fresh air, we were drinking from the garden hose.
yes, yes,
We were, running till we dropped, we got dirty,
yeah,
and we just had that childlike hope
yeah.
and fun. And, you know, I'll I'll always have a memory. And again, I know, as a family, we've walked through several different things, but I remember shortly after Luke was diagnosed, and you had mentioned children's hospitals and whatnot. And I was in a parent class of learning how to do the next three and a
Oh
half
wow,
years.
wow.
And And I came back out of that class, and I remember I went back to his room and he wasn't in his bed, and that immediately had my heart going like this.
Sure,
And
sure.
I quickly start charging down the hall, and I found, I went by a room. It was the child life specialist room, and my parents had just gotten into town, and he was sitting on my dad's lap, and he was pounding on a drum. And he was in this big drum circle, pounding on a drum, happy, um, didn't have a care in the world. And I remember I scanned this drum circle, and it was all just little kids, all different ages and challenges that they were facing, and they were in there being kids. And
Hmm.
and I remember leaning up against the glass, literally drawing and pulling inspiration from them, because here were all those little bodies going through things that, some people can't ever even wrap their heads
Yeah,
around. And it was a real life lesson for me as a mom,
yeah,
and what we were about to enter into for
sure.
years of, okay, where can I draw my strength from? You
Yeah,
and how as parents we can also lead that. Now that doesn't mean that they didn't also witness some real hard times from mom and dad, but I think you really mentioned it of really just showing up, doing the best that we can do, and being transparent with that.
yeah, yeah. I love that moment too because you see that, and you see him having fun, and
Right.
I would always recommend to parents lean into that a little bit. Like
Yes.
if I was in that moment, I'd say, "Would you like a drum too?" Like I lean in, have
Right.
fun, play with the kids. Like
Yes. Let it fill your cup.
take some stress off. Yes, yes,
Right.
absolutely.
And tell me, this was something, and you had touched on it earlier, uh, to in having those conversations with all the kids,
Yeah,
to keep it as transparent as we possibly can, given their age and their stage of their development, right? I recall saying to my kids, "We will tell you everything that we know." Now, in my mind, I also thought that's going to look different for the 3-year-old than the 13-year-old. But,
sure.
but I also, uh, just moving through life, and for our listeners, is there a little bit of calm that might come into our children's world or the siblings' world if they know, okay, mom and dad are on our side, they aren't
Yeah,
hiding things from us, yet as parents, knowing that we need to scale it
yeah,
to their developmental stage?
yeah. I think you're right. I think you're hitting on. There is definitely a calm knowing that the child trusts that the parent is gonna not lie to them. And I think maybe having a statement like that of like, we're not gonna lie about what's going on, and encouraging the children that they can ask questions at any time.
Mhm.
You know,
Right.
that from the start of the process to 6 months down the line or a year later, like if you have questions about where we're going or what's happening or what we're doing, you can ask those questions. And I would be honest with all of the kids, whether 13 or 3, all the way in between, that that you will try your best to answer. And I think that um, the conversations with the oldest, yeah, yeah, obviously you're gonna have to scale them, and I would share that with the oldest because I think sometimes uh, kids, it depends on how the age, but sometimes kids um, maybe overshare a little bit with their younger siblings too on a variety of topics. This is
Sure.
not just this, but I I would definitely kind of try to have a more um, a more intentional conversation with the older child, the oldest child, about that you will be scaling and that this is something that you trust them with, and but that they're allowed to ask questions too, and that they're allowed to be scared too. So remembering that they are both um, I think a lot of times when I think about conversations and disclosing things with children, I try to think about the developmental age of that child. And so the child, all children want their parents to feel like they, are trusted and safe,
Right.
but they also want to make sure that you also want to make sure that you as the parent are reminding the child that they're still a kid too,
Mm,
even if they're 13, even if they're 15, or even that they're still your child no matter what age, and that you are there for them, and that maybe they have more responsibility, or maybe they're learning more details than the 3-year old would be,
right.
but that you're still their parent, and you still love them, and then it's going to be scary for them too. And kind of honoring both sides. They want to be the oldest sibling. They want to play both roles. They want to be the oldest sibling, the most mature, the role model, the solid one. But they're also still like, maybe your firstborn baby. It's like they're still your child. So
Yes, that's such a great point. And, again, we learn as we go through this for sure.
sure,
Uh, but just remembering that importance of allowing them to still be kids. Uh,
yeah,
just you have provided and have just given us such a beautiful example that healing can happen even during these really hard times. And uh, just to be able to wrap our arms around all of it. And, I often say to be able to hold the hard and the beauty at the same
yeah,
time and be able to look for that. And, I would always say fill your cup on those good and joyous days that can maybe
yeah,
carry you through when the other days are kind of in the future that might not be so easy.
sure,
Keep your cup
sure,
filled.
yeah, absolutely.
I am so appreciative of the insight and just the guidance that you bring to us and spending time with us at our retreat. I know, you were such a presence for parents that were there, again, learning how to do this also. I have to
Sure,
say there's no handbook on how to do difficult things
right.
like this.
Yeah,
And we often kind of have to find our way through. And because of conversations like this and your presence when you join us at retreats and things, you
sure.
throw that lifeline to so many people. So thank you so much for
Yeah, no,
everything that you do. Special people in the world do your kind of work. And so thank you for that, but also just for being such a part of our life and our family, but also with Rooted Within. I'm so appreciative of you.
yeah. Thank you so much. I so appreciate talking with you always, and I so appreciate everything that you were doing with Rooted Within. It's just incredible, and I'm very very happy to be a very very tiny little
Uh,
part of it, and I'm very honored to join this. So
well, thank you so much, Drew Horn. I appreciate it. Wow. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. And more than anything, just be able to draw upon ideas and suggestions and maybe put a little breath back in your lungs as a parent and a caregiver. And more than anything, just give yourself that permission to lean in, to learn more, to be aware, and also to know that there is no handbook to this other than to just be able to hold your family tight and walk alongside of them, and definitely to know that there is help and support there for you in any way that you may need, either individually or as a family. I'm so glad you're here, and please always know that you are never alone in this walk.